Hello. Hello, friends. Thank you for coming. There are a few seats in the front row for those who are feeling brave. And over in this section, there's a few seats. Can I have a show of hands if you find this title a little bit scary or intimidating? Yeah. People tell me this. People tell me the titles of my talks scare them a little bit. So here's an alternate talk I could give. Right? How to change one pretty small thing in an area where you have some influence already. But as the saying goes, it's the same picture. You don't have to change the world irrevocably, totally, completely, or even memorably to change the world. You just need to change something, and you're changing the world. That's how it works. Some changes that you may know me for. I did a talk called Stop Teaching C when you're teaching C++. And I just checked, it's at 175,000 views, which is a lot for a conference talk. And more importantly, I think this talk worked. I think people teach C++ differently than they did 10 years ago. And one of the reasons is this talk gave them some reasons to use to change the way they were teaching C++. I also helped to form Include C++, which has changed some community practices, especially around conferences. And I have been running for decades a business that employs people, makes people better programmers by working for us, but also by providing our services to the companies they are programmers for, and keeps other businesses in business that they wouldn't be without our services. And I like to do what's called sending the elevator back down, so making sure that other people can come up to where I am, whether that's encouraging people to speak, encouraging people to stay in the industry. I can't tell you how many people I have told, you don't want to leave tech, you just want to leave that job. There are jobs and workplaces that are not like that. And I've also put a fair amount of time into talking about different ways to define what it means to be a success or to excel. But I wanted to talk about change in more general than rather just what I have done. Do you change the world if you invent a language? I think the invention of C++ changed our world, but not really the invention of it. Right? The reason so many of us have lives that were changed because C++ existed is because of everything that went into getting people to use it and getting it to be widely adopted and getting it to be a very popular language. If you make a little utility script of some kind and you stick it on a website so it's easy for you to get to whether you're at work or at home, does that change the world? Well, it does if it's Compiler Explorer, right? I mean, that has absolutely changed the way we teach, the way we present, the way we ask questions, the way we support each other. That's huge. But in general, putting scripts on websites doesn't change the world, right? I've written books. Probably many of you have written or know someone who has written a book. Sometimes they change the world. Usually they don't. It's not so much about the book as about the people who read it, the people who take the advice that's in it and use the content and make things different. It's not about just creating a thing. Boom, I did that. I made a thing, world's different now, yay me. There's all this work that comes after where you get other people to buy in, you get other people to start doing things the way you want them to do them. It is luck and it is work. Because changing the world means changing people. Getting people to do something they would not have done if it wasn't for you. That's the point. Otherwise, you're just watching the world change, you're not changing the world. And that means something as simple as, we should have more tests in this project. Well, could transform your team and your project and a whole lot of other things. I was just talking a couple days ago about the old writing a JSON parser over the weekend person. You all know the person who went off to write the JSON parser over the weekend, and you probably know how well that story ends every time. We should use a trusted community library for whatever it is we need to do right now, instead of writing and maintaining something of our own. More personally, turning to someone you know and saying, that job there is a great fit for you. You would be great at it. Apply for it. Or saying to someone on your team that we should make sure all kinds of people are welcome here, not just people who are just like those we already have. I think our weekly meetings would be more effective if any one of these things can change the world. My favorite is not cool, and we don't do that here. That makes the target of whatever not cool thing just happened feel immediately better, and it may change the person who is misbehaving. These are very small things, but they matter. I'm going to teach you techniques for making changes, but I can't cover everything, so this is not about changing yourself. How can I finally get around to learning to paint watercolors or losing weight or quitting smoking? Nor is it how can I persuade my boss to promote me or my spouse to agree to move somewhere different or what have you. While these are changes, the skills you use to get these changes are not what I'm going to be talking about. What I'm going to be talking about is we should, you should, someone should. When you find yourself thinking that way, those are the kinds of changes you can get other people to make. And it is work. For one thing, if you want to be all, we should be using a trusted library from the community instead of writing our own thing, people will say, oh, what trusted library from the community do you use? And if your answer is, well, none, but I think it's a really good idea, you're losing credibility. So a lot of time, the first work you have to do is whatever it is you want other people to do, you have to step up and do. Not every time, but it's an often first step. And for many people, that's the first step that prevents them from going any further. What's more, there will be people who think you are wrong, who think there's already too many tests in this project. I'd like to write some actual code that solves the user's problems once in a while. They push back. They can be wrong, but that doesn't stop them pushing back. You may have met people who push back even though they're wrong. You don't actually know if you will succeed in getting your change to happen or not. One of the big differences between junior programmers and senior programmers is that junior programmers don't believe that things will necessarily work. More senior programmers are like, hey, this should be possible with that API. And I tried a thing and it didn't work, but I'm going to try another thing, or I'm going to call support, or I'm going to double check the documentation or whatever, because they believe it should work. And that carries us through an awful lot of stuff, whereas juniors go, oh, I guess I can't do this. But when it comes to trying to change other people, you can't be sure it will work, no matter how hard you try. Now, the good news is you don't have to do it alone, and you don't have to start with the biggest and most difficult thing, even if that is the most important. You don't have to do that first. So what do? You have to make a conscious choice. I am going to stand up and say that I think something is suboptimal, and that puts a target on you, right? Because people who think it's fine will now be annoyed at you. You might be wrong also. You might look really stupid. So you have to be brave. Being brave is not about not being scared. It's about being scared and doing it anyway. And I was in Daniela's talk before lunch. It's not fine, and you're going to do something about it. Okay, you've made that choice. You have to know what you're trying to achieve. The form in which you say it to yourself may not be the form in which you say it to other people, but you have to have a goal. How will you know when you're done? How will you know when you're making progress? So if you're simple as, why don't any women work in this company? Your goal could be, there should be women working in this company. But you might not say it that way to people, even if that's your goal. In order to achieve your goal, who needs to change? Which people, which teams, which parts of the organization, which policies and rules need to change? It can be a hard question to answer. It's one bullet on a slide, but it could be months of work, right? Now, who can you change? So if you want more tests in the project, there's a person who's nominally in charge of how many tests are in the project. You convince that person, you're done. If you want your company to pay money to exhibit at a conference, et cetera, you may not have any idea who's in charge of that. It may take you a long time. And then when you find out who it is, you may find out, I can't change that person. I don't know them, they don't know me, they're not going to listen to me. So you have to evaluate who can you change. And then you'll do one of these things. If the set of people you need to change and the set of people you can change match well, okay, you know your next task, change them. You may want to put together a team, or you may want to increase your own change power. I'm going to talk quite a bit about that. Or change the scope of what you're going to try to achieve. So when you think about who needs to change, I've set up a kind of gradient here, and as you move down the gradient, it gets harder. The easiest people is your colleagues and your peers. They know you, they trust you, they're aware of your abilities, and you know probably what motivates them, which is about the perfect situation for trying to persuade somebody to do something. Company policy, a little bit harder, but you're not a stranger, and you may know the reason behind the policy and why things are different now. Reaching out of your org into another one gets tough. That conference I like to go to should have a different policy. I'm going to try to persuade them to change it. The standards committee should do something different. That library vendor should do something different, or those open source folks, that amorphous blob of strangers, should do something different. This is a lot harder. It's partly about size, but it's also partly about you don't have any power or control over these people. You have nothing but your ability to convince. And when you think about something like Stop Teaching C, I didn't have any control over an unknown group of people who were out there teaching Intro to C++ courses by spending days 1 to 3 basically teaching C, and then on day 4, subtracting out all the bits of C that weren't appropriate anymore, and then on day 5, if there was time, they might get into something like objects, but they never managed to get around to like lambdas or anything ridiculous like that because, you spent a lot of time on printf. Trying to reach strangers who you have no relationship with is amongst the hardest possibility. The only thing that's harder is the public, right? So if you want to go out there and over the last few decades, I've seen things like drinking and driving going from socially acceptable to completely unacceptable by people who weren't afraid to get out and try to change the public's mind on things. With bigger groups, you need bigger reasons, bigger benefits. But you get objections from people you don't know anything about. Everyone down at your level agrees this is totally the right thing to do. Up one level, they're like, well, it'll be a little bit more expensive, but I can see it can be worth it. But you get up another 3 or 4 levels and people are like, nope, there's an elbow in the schedule at November 1st, and if we don't go live till November 4th, we're done for. You're like, what? You have no idea about this. You didn't know how any of this worked, but they've got some objection you can't refute, didn't know existed, can't work around. As well, it might seem like there's some percentage of people in a group you need to persuade. And if you can persuade 80 or 90 or 95 or 99%, then you will win. But that's not how it works. Typically, one person who doesn't like what you want can make it not happen, whether that's one of your 3 teammates or one of the 1,000 people in your company. One person is enough to say, nope. And that's just the reality of group dynamics. This next one here was really a late lesson for me. I had some spectacular failures until I learned this. You can't go to someone who doesn't work in your company, who doesn't have any management in common with you, and who doesn't have any revenue in common with you, and approach them as a teammate or a buddy or a pal and say, hey, we both want the same thing here, because we don't. We just don't. And when you use teammate techniques on, say, someone who's running a conference, they just don't listen to you. You just don't get through to them. When you have vendor techniques, like if you don't add this feature, we're never ordering your product again, and I know how many millions of... That doesn't work with the public. That doesn't work with open source communities, right? You've got to use techniques that are appropriate to the relationship and the group that you're working with. And many of us have had a hard enough time learning one technique. We've successfully learned how to persuade our teammates to have more tests in this project, and then we go up to the conference to tell them why they should do whatever it is we want them to do, and the techniques will absolutely not work. Do it badly enough, and you'll poison the well. Oh, somebody came to us about that 5 years ago. It was a nightmare. They made everyone feel terrible. They wasted everyone's time. We decided we're never doing it. Go away. Don't talk to us about it. I've been told that, and I've probably been the cause of a next person being told that. So it's important when you're thinking about going up and persuading people to do something they don't want to do, because that's the point. If they wanted to do it, they would have done it. You can make it worse. You have to do it right or don't do it. So that means being really firm about who can I influence. Sometimes we have some institutional authority, like maybe we're in charge. You know, I'm the team lead. People come to me for decisions about these things. Excellent. But you could be the security person in your company, officially or unofficially. Probably a lot of us are the something person, you know, the get person, the CMake person, the performance person. Sometimes it'll be as simple as management telling someone, make sure you run that by insert name here before it goes live. And if you have that, you don't need then to be able to fire people. You just need to be able to use that and say, I want you to do it this way. Someone else can fire them if necessary. It's not your problem. You might be seen as an expert. Now, understand there's a big difference between being an expert and being seen as an expert. The world is full of people who are absolutely experts. They have PhDs in things, but the folks who are making the decisions don't care. So, you know, the people you want to influence have to think you're an expert and care that you're an expert in whatever security, performance, team dynamic, whatever you're trying to talk about. Sometimes you have your own power, but you can also exert through other people. So if you have an audience for your podcast or your YouTube channel, your blog or whatever, and you put a call to action out there, will that audience pick it up and magnify it and go to their bosses and to their open source communities and whatnot? Can you say, well, say you're trying to persuade a conference to do something, this other conference listened to me and they did it, you know, oh, well, we can shortcut some decision-making process by crowdsourcing and saying we'll take the same decision as that other organization. People love to do that. That feels really safe, so that could work. Or you could leverage a title or a position. So if you're on the C++ Standards Committee, I know a lot of people who have said to me about another person, well, they're on the C++ Standards Committee, so you know they're a really good programmer. Okay. Yep, that's how you get on the Standards Committee, all right. The more lines of code you ship into production, the quicker your application goes through. And there are particular skills to be on the Standards Committee, and they're not the ones most people think they are, but that's fine if it gives you a chance to put this hat on that says, oh yes, as a member of the Standards Committee, I totally think we should have more const in our code base. Do it. People want to skip the evaluating step. Who do I need to change? Who can I change? Oh, it doesn't seem to be very similar. Well, I'll just gloss over that. But like, no, you've got to stand in that place. Who can you influence, nudge, persuade, convince, talk them into trying it? When you think about those people, if they're a subset of the group that needs to change, you're on the right track. But they might not be, and you can't just wish they are. You can't just say, well, all my teammates agree with me, so I'm sure the boss will agree with me. You have to really understand whether you can get the boss to agree with you. And it's possible you can't. It's very possible, especially if you haven't tried changing anything yet, that you will find yourself in this sad, empty room. There's no one you can convince. This is more likely if you are young, inexperienced, seen as an outsider, people don't know you, you don't have authority, and especially if you're part of a historically excluded group, a gender minority, racial minority, immigrant, linguistic minority, and so on. If you don't have a platform or an audience or some influence multiplying, and if the argument you're making is long and complicated or non-existent, you're just like, well, everyone knows we should. Like if you can bring a convincing one sentence because this, you might be able to overcome the first two bullets, but without the good argument, it's likely there's no one you can convince. If that's the case, you don't get to make this change now. So you go through this evaluation process and you're like, here's what I need to change, and here's what I can change, and it's no one, absolutely no one. Well, you don't just go, well, I better get started. Like, you can't do this change right now if that's the case. And I want to take a small sidebar into the possibility that you might be taking on the wrong change. Don Quixote, yes, no, tilted, right? He thought there was an invading army, but it was windmills, and he was going to get out there and repel them. There are things that are really, really hard to change. They take generations. But there are also things that don't need to change. So it's possible the reason nobody's listening to your argument, nobody's joining your team, is because you're wrong. And you should think about that. You might not be wrong, but you should think about the possibility that you are. But if you are in fact right, and just starting in on some decade or generational long transformation of the world around you, maybe there's something that's quicker that you could start with. Maybe you could save the generations long task for your second or third thing that you take on in this world. And who knows, sometimes if you do a lot of quick and local things, they can add up. But that's not why you do them. You do them for themselves to do them. Would it be worthwhile to reach the smaller goal, even if that ended up being all that you did? If so, that's a good goal, right? It's not just some pointless thing that's just a way station to your real goal. It actually is a useful goal on its own. That's fantastic. Don't be alone if you can help it. So let's go back to this I can't convince anyone. Okay, you couldn't convince anyone of the group of people who needed to change, but maybe there's one other person in the world you can convince. Okay, the two of you can now be a team, right? Now, if the one person is your boss, this is great because your boss has authority, and we can go to the bullet about having authority, and your boss can tell people they got to do it. You're done. But if they don't have that authority, they're a teammate, still it's 2 votes now, but also your teammate may come up with a great analogy or a great example or a great piece of sample code or something else that hadn't occurred to you that will convince people. So now the 2 of you are bringing more information to the conversations and the discussions because you did manage to convince one person. Some people have audiences, some people have authority, some people have ideas, some people have connections. You don't necessarily know which they're going to have, but everyone you bring onto your metaphorical side brings something. Almost certainly not an African proverb, but still a compelling idea. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. But you don't have to start a group if you can join a group. This is even better. Someone else has started one, and they're doing some things you care about, you can join in. And ta-da, you're working towards things you care about. This is great. They've got a lot of logistics taken care of. They've identified who needs to change. You just need to roll up your sleeves and help. Maybe they're not quite exactly aligned 100% with you. You can help to make that group better. If you're like, it's a great group, but it should be more diverse, it should have more local stuff, or it should have more global stuff, bigger, better, more something, you can do all those things within the context of that group. Now you're achieving the goals that you came here to achieve, and you're also getting better at making change. Because that's an actual skill. Walking up to someone who's minding their own business and saying, there should be more tests in this project, and by the time you're done, there's more tests in this project, is a skill that's entirely different from writing tests or doing a code review. And so working at getting better at change will make you more capable of bringing other changes into play. Well, what if there's no group? What if you can't persuade even one person to join you? What if you're sure this isn't tilting at windmills, but there isn't anyone you can talk to and get them to move on this? This is a good time to shrink your scope a little. 2 ways to do that. One is to try to take on a smaller change, right? So we should have more tests is smaller than we should be doing 100% TDD. You might work your way up someday to something, but at least having more tests is a smaller change. I love this one. A lot of people out there want to change C++. Probably, if you would admit it and put your hand up, probably a third of this room wants to change C++. But a much easier thing to do is change the way our team uses C++. Okay? Much different audience, different set of people you need to change, much more achievable goal. And we'll probably meet most of your reasons for wanting to make that change. In the same spirit, getting rid of 2 random things, A and B, whatever they are, is much, much harder than show people what they could do instead of those two things. A and B might continue to exist, but people who get in touch with me and come into my sphere of influence are going to stop using them because I've shown them alternatives. Okay, and maybe A and B will wither away and die someday. That's cool. Anyone here rewrite our flagship product in Rust? It's a thing? Yeah, maybe use Rust for some utility or auxiliary product or something, right? So we can have the experience of writing something in Rust, but we don't take away the bread and butter day-to-day product for 3 years with a rewrite. Or keep the change the same, but scale back on who is supposed to make that change, right? Get all the somebodies to do something is huge and enormous in the worldwide. Get all the whatevers I'm part of to do that same something. That's a much more tractable goal. Changing your industry is huge, your company is less so, your team, again, maybe this is a scope you can actually start with. Sometimes this is a sub-goal. After I change my team, then I'm going to go through the company like a flaming sword, and the whole company's going to change, and then we're going to be so rich, everyone's going, why is that company doing so well? And then the whole industry is going to start doing what I want, and that could be the story. But it doesn't have to be. If you've changed your team, you've changed the world. A thing people don't know. 2 things happen when you shrink your scope, and they're both good. They synergize on each other. The first is your risk is lower. If you're out there telling the CEO of your biggest competitor that they're a moron, you may never get hired in that biggest competitor when you're done working here. If you only tell your project manager that they're a moron, then things are less risky for you. You don't have to have such a big profile, hey, we're doing it wrong moment if you start small. So the risk is lower to you. You're also more likely to succeed. So the 2 numbers that you would multiply together are both getting better for you. You're less likely to fail spectacularly, but if you do fail spectacularly, the damage to you will be much less. So that makes it a much safer thing to do. And again, you're building that change power. Think about that list of reasons why there was no one you could influence. Well, you're young. Get older. This one's easy. You'll all be an hour older by the time I'm done talking. You see, it's so simple. Gain experience. This is not as easy. We all know someone who has the same year of experience 20 times rather than having 20 years of experience. But you can also raise your profile, become better known, and maybe you'll come to understand why some people want to be the team lead, the senior, whatever, the technical fellow, the to have that authority. Why some people want to be the security person and the performance person, because that gives you authority to get things done the way you think they should be done. Now maybe it makes sense. You can build that audience, that platform, that influence in the outer world so that when you blog, podcast, whatever, put something on your YouTube channel, thousands or hundreds of thousands of people actually hear it and maybe take action. And understand that when you want to persuade somebody to do something, it's a set of techniques that is not the same as writing code, not the same as talking in a meeting with your colleagues at stand-up. So there are particular skills like public speaking, blogging, writing a paper, using social media. Even, remember when I said not cool? You can take courses on bystander intervention. You're on a bus and person A is harassing person B to do with their gender or their race or their religion or something, and you, I don't like that, but you don't really know what to do. You can go and take courses on bystander intervention and learn how to step in and make a difference in that moment. It's a skill just like public speaking or blogging. You can actively learn how to make changes occur around you, and also how to promote. I'm a person who change happens around. So people begin to understand that you have an influence and you have a change power. Because when you get better at leading change, you genuinely pick up skills. Persuading people, noticing that you're getting somewhere, following up, asking for the close, as they say in sales, getting people to commit to do what you want. These are all particular skills that you can improve at. But you see where things have failed in the past and say, oh, I was using teammate techniques on a vendor. I need to not do that. So you become genuinely better. But you also become seen as better. And a huge part of change leading is trust. Basically, you're saying, trust me, bro. If we just put twice as many tests in, our life is going to be so much better. And if they trust you, they might do it. If they don't trust you, they won't. You get confident when you make a difference. When things are better than you found them, you know you had something to do with that, and people can tell. The way you talk, the way you stand, the ideas you put forward change. Okay, but I've been talking for a long time, kind of vaguely. So let's get more specific. Nudge, persuade, influence, convince. What does that mean? What do you do with your mouth, right? Or with your fingers on a keyboard to make that happen? You do two things. You give people information, and you ask them to change. We should have more tests in this project. And then all the benefits of what would happen, all the costs of what would be cheaper, all the story of that time you did it and it was great, whatever. Those are the only two things. Do you give information and then ask? Yes. Do you ask and then give information? Yes. Do you give a little bit of information and then they ask and then more information if they ask? Yes. Like it depends. It's a very C++ answer, but that's appropriate here. It also, the answer to how much do you give them? Like just info dump on them for an hour and a half and then say, so in summation, I think there should be strawberry ice cream in the ice cream machines. Probably not. But the exact amount of information for each change is going to vary. A really powerful technique for me is to ask a question. This question works when they don't need the speech. They already know the truth. They just need to be reminded. Why are all the pictures on our website white men in their 30s? Just asking, just wondering. You know, you could do a whole thing about women hold up half the sky and blah, but whoever you're asking already knows that they should not have a homogeneous website like that. And when you ask why, they're going to look at their feet and probably change the website. Example names. I read so many examples where every single user is a guy who probably lives in the middle of the United States somewhere in the suburbs. Right? They're all called Jim and Steve. And the people I know are not all called Jim and Steve. I know women. I know people with names like Andre or Noor or any other number of not middle of the United States names. But examples, demos, written material over and over again, absolutely all the same. And it's not a hard thing to do. If you have a diverse team, it's great. You can just say, hey, didn't want to give me like your sister's Chinese name I can put in here. But if you have a non-diverse team, there are still sources of information for common first names other than your own. The old biometric test scenario. Has anyone seen the video of the soap dispenser that only gives white people soap? It's just devastating. The white person holds their hand under the soap dispenser. Brown person holds their hand under the soap dispenser. Nothing. 3, 4, 5 different people all holding their hand under the soap dispenser. Nothing. Here's what we got to do. He says he gets a white paper towel, puts it on his hand. He gets the soap. It's like, oh, that's embarrassing. Like you shipped that, right? You sold that to airport bathrooms or office bathrooms or something all over the world, and now more than half of the people who are trying to get soap out of the soap dispenser are being told you don't exist. That's very sad. Simple question like, who all did we test this against? And then 5 people called Jim and Steve, who are all under 30 and have blonde hair and are 6 feet tall, say, oh, we tested it on all of us. I'm short-legged. I'm short in general, but I'm very short-legged as well. And I can't tell you how many places I've been where clearly all of the testing was by people who have legs that come to about here on me. And I can't work these steps kind of thing. So just ask them, who'd you test against? Just yourselves, just each other, or did you go find like a diverse population? to test this biometric thing. And I learned this question from Alex Chen at an ACCU conference. Imagine a vengeful ex who at one point had access to someone's purse, someone's phone, someone's keychain, and now is their vengeful ex. How can they use your product to hurt someone? And you know this is a question that some designers never thought of. Think about how long it took between when AirTags were released and when you got that feature on the phone that's like, hey, there's an AirTag with you that it's not yours. It was months, right? Months. Because whoever invented AirTags didn't consider AirTags being dropped into purses at bars, which was a very real thing that was happening when they first came out. So this is a good question to ask. If you can't just ask a question, you're going to give them the ask and you're going to give them information. And it's very tempting to give them information about how much other people deserve your compassion and generosity. So I think we should make this company appeal to all different kinds of people so that lots of folks will work here and we'll have a diverse team, because women and people of color and immigrants and people who speak our language as a second language deserve good jobs. We should all step back a bit and give something up so that they can get what they deserve. That may be what you feel in your heart, but I got to tell you, that doesn't move a lot of needles. What moves needles is, if you do what I'm suggesting, you'll get these benefits. Your life will be better, right? So we won't release embarrassing products that don't deliver soap to half the world because we'll have a properly diverse team, that kind of thing. It's rare that you can only use the guilty approach to get someone to do what you want. And it's rare that there's only a benefits approach. Usually you have a choice of your mixing and your matching. And I want to encourage you to look for and lean on the benefits side. There are benefits to companies of having diverse teams with different backgrounds linguistically and educationally. And like some of you are carpenters as a hobby, and then that turns out to be really important one day. You never know. You get a better response when you tell people what's in it for them. Most people are a little bit selfish. Unfortunately, this means you need to know what people care about. You can't motivate a complete stranger because you don't know what's important to their company or to themselves personally. And sometimes they have a mission statement. I gotta tell you, these are often a lie. So there'll be a mission statement for the group that says, the most important thing to us is like educating other people. And then you come to them and you say, since educating other people is really important to you, I think you should blah. And they don't do that because that's not actually what they care about at all. That's just their mission statement, right? So sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. A lot of companies and a lot of people very motivated by money, getting more or spending less. But don't underestimate reputation, right? If I'm trying to get a conference to do something, how are they going to get speakers? How are they going to get attendees? If it's a company that sells a product, how are they going to get employees? How are they going to sell copies of their product? And people worry about their own personal legacy and what they will be remembered for. And you can lean on these things as a way to try to move them to what you want them to do. A lot of people want to avoid hassle and trouble. You don't threaten them with hassle and trouble. I'll make your life a living misery if you don't. But there can be times when saying, you know, this is the kind of thing where if it got out, people would say a lot of crummy things about you. And I think there's time for you to put out a statement now before that happens, and then you can skip all that nastiness. They'll be grateful for the advice. And individual humans want to be promoted. They want to be elected. They want to be chosen. They want to be employee of the month. So sometimes this is a chance for you to show them how to be a superstar. I went and watched Stop Teaching C again to see what I had done. This was pretty much exactly 10 years ago. And you know what? Like, complaining about how C++ is taught was old then. We would sit at the backs of conferences and complain about teaching printf for a day before we did anything real and not managing to get around to lambdas. But when I wrote this talk, 40 seconds into the talk, I said, if you do what I want, your course will be more enjoyable and it will make better programmers. And understand, if you're a trainer, the only two ways trainers get rebooked and sell more courses and get more work as a trainer is either that individuals have a great time on the course and tell their friends, oh, I really enjoyed this course, it was fantastic. Or they come out of it better than they went in, and their bosses are like, I'm sending more people on this course. I was doing a course in a now defunct company in Canada, so I won't name it, but we gave one instance of it, and all those people went and told their friends, so the next week, it was a one-day course, we did 3 instances of it, and eventually we were doing 10 instances a week because we only had 2 trainers who could do it. But like everybody wanted to take this course. So when you tell trainers people will enjoy your course and you will make them better at what you're doing, you are saying this is a benefit for you, the trainer. And I said that 40 seconds into the talk. At 2 minutes and 30 seconds, I said doing what I suggest will make C++ easier to learn. I did talk about fair and nice and you know what people deserve, but I really hammered over and over again. I was surprised rewatching it how much I told people the benefit of doing what I wanted them to do. You can get to lambdas in a 5-day course, because these days we do 1-day courses, but anyway. Knowing the benefits of going along with my suggested change opened people up to considering taking on the non-trivial work of teaching C++ as C++ rather than as C, and then a day and a half of other stuff. You may have some good examples or analogies that you can draw on. Again, like the question, the we should is right in the information. And this is anything that makes the right thing the easy and simple thing. But it has a weird psychological benefit, which is that when you give thing a name, it becomes like a law of nature. This is no longer like Kate thinks this is a good idea, and it's more like this is how the world works. And the example I'm going to give you is the Pac-Man move. When we're standing around in circles here, mingling, you want to be inclusive and welcoming. You don't want people feeling left out or lonely. You want them to be able to join conversations. And the way to do that is, like Pac-Man, circle with a piece missing, you leave a gap in your circle. And that's for the newcomer to come and stand in. And when the newcomer fills the gap in, someone should say, oh, we need to Pac-Man. And everyone move out a little bit and make another gap for another newcomer to stand in. And this totally works. If you leave a gap in your circles, people will join you. And I've had some very enjoyable conversations with folks who've joined in that context. It's an easy thing to do. And because it has a name, you can all remember it and tell other people to do it. But if you don't have Pac-Man move or something else available to you, then you have to think about what you're trying to change, why you think that's good. Probably have 10 reasons. Of those 10 reasons, which ones are relevant to this audience, and then use their reasons. Not your number one reason, their number one reason, because you're trying to change them. And this may mean talking to people with whom you disagree on 50 or 60 different things. Find something you can agree on, understand why they're doing what they're doing, which you don't want them to do, and then tell them why it's in their interest to shift. This can be very difficult. Sometimes no one will ever admit the reasons. I read a really good analogy about a library in a town where the benefactor who built the library was very, very ableist and felt that anyone who was disabled should not be out in public, much less in a library. So the library has only stairs, it has no ramps, it has no elevators. There's nothing to help anyone who can't see or hear. And that person dies, but the library stays on. And there's no elevators and no ramps. And nobody in a wheelchair can get into the library. And no one who works in the library is ableist anymore. But there's no elevators. And if you're there trying to persuade people to put elevators in, it's a challenge. And saying it's not fair, people in wheelchairs like books too, may not get you as far as you're supposed to serve the whole community. There's a huge chunk of the community that isn't getting served. You can be better aligned with your mandate. So you got to know what motivates them. And this part's really hard. Time and again I have seen groups try to get someone to do something. Then when they do it, we're like, we should put out a blog post or a social media statement that says, yay, they did it. Oh no, I don't want to reward them. They're bad people. We still disagree with them on 10 things, and they only did that 11th thing because we asked them to. Yes, Just to be clear, yes, they did it because we asked them to. That was the point. We asked them to do it so they would do it, and then they did it, and that's a win. And we need the win. We need our social media to say, we won, we got someone to do something. But also we need to give a benefit to the person who did what we wanted. There may be still 10 more things we want them to do, but they did one thing, and we want to give them some credit for that. So right now, for example, on social media, there are some microblogging platforms out there that people have money in, that get paid for people reading their newsletters, and some of them are awful. And you want people to move off those platforms. And so I'll see posts that say, hey, everybody welcome username here. They just moved off horrible platform to not currently known to be horrible platform. Give them all a follow, and you may still feel that there's some other things you want that person to do. Maybe they're still active on Twitter and you'd like them to get off of Twitter while they're at it. But hey, they moved off horrible platform. Give them some credit and take some credit yourself for being someone who made a change happen. Now, sometimes when you tell somebody we should have more tests in this project, they think they know what that will cost, right? It's going to take so much longer. It'll be so much more work. People will make fun of us if we have whatever it is we're trying to have. And they won't usually say this out loud, but they're thinking, I don't know how to do that. So the cost is I'm going to have to learn how to do that, and that sounds hard. When you're in those situations, you should provide the benefit with the ask. So compare, I think we should X, just have clear blue sky, we should have more tests in our project. I think we should speed up our releases by doing this thing. That's a different sentence, right? Now you've got people's attention, especially if you just had a really horrible release that everybody was like trying to chew their foot off to get out of the trap by the time the release was done. Or I think we should improve our employee retention by doing whatever. And especially if you just lost some really important employees, you're going to get people's attention. So putting the benefits right in the ask can kind of counterbalance the costs that people already have thought of. Don't just say we should do it. They'll say, no, it's expensive. Tell them the benefit, then they can weigh it against that. I used to have quite a few people working for me who would do things like send me an email that said, interesting video, and then there'd be a YouTube link. They were very surprised that I never watched those videos. They were like, did you see that video I sent you? I'm like, no. If you want to send me a video, it should say, this video is about something, and ideally, it would be super cool if you could tell me how long it is and who it's by and why that matters, right? So here's a 15-minute video by someone I went to university with about how they sped up their process by thing. And honestly, like if you can't type that sentence, why are you sending me a link to this video? It could just be a really funny turtle trapped in a box or something, right? Like I don't know. If you want to say, here's a really funny video of a turtle trapped in a box, then tell me that. But if you can't summarize the blog, the video, the whatever in one sentence, then you're probably not really ready to share it. So if you're in a meeting trying to persuade everyone to do your exciting thing like we should have code review, actually know someone who's going through this in a company. We should have code review. No, I don't think so. Yeah, I really think it would help. If you're in one of those meetings, don't just go, here's a video. Tell people how long it is, tell them what it's about, and tell them kind of its main point, like they saved this much money or they caught this many more bugs or whatever it was that they did. If it's a personal habit that you have done and that you think others should do, then your personal experience ideally put some numbers in it, right? I've been doing this for 6 months and my bug rate is down this much. My JIRA tickets closed per week is up this much, whatever. Give people some numbers at the same time as you tell them they should do it. And when you think that people have an idea in their head that's wrong about the costs, you can also deliver the costs along with the ask. Right? So I've done this on other projects, and it only adds 2 days or 5% or whatever it is that it adds to do this thing. You will get objections and you will get pushback. And I wanted to call out 3 particular objections that I have gotten over the decades because they feel like, oh, that's the end of the conversation. When someone says this, there's no defense, I'm stuck. But in fact, they're all completely overcomable. So my favorite, we don't need to make that official. That's what we're already doing. We got that a lot when we were asking conferences to do code of conduct. Oh, the people who come to our conferences are great. Yeah, we don't need a code of conduct. It's fine. Everyone's fine. This is how we've always done it, and the partner, nobody else has a problem with it. I remember when I was a university student in 1977 or 8, used to pay for groceries with a check. That's you write on a piece of paper with a pen. And you couldn't just do that to strangers, so you had to have a check card, and you had to apply to get a check card. And the application, name, address, phone number, husband's occupation. Like, excuse me, I did not enjoy that. Manager told me no one else has ever objected, which even in 1977 I don't think was true. And we can't control who applies, right? All our speakers look the same, all our employees look the same, all our award winners look the same, but hey, it's not up to us, like nobody nominated, nobody applied, nobody submitted, what are we gonna do? You may think you can't get past these, but you can get past all 3 of these. We don't need to make that official, basically says, we're close enough, your change is very small, it's completely unimportant, it won't make any real difference. So you agree. It should be done, and it'll be really quick. That's great. Let's do it right now. I'll help you. Nothing to it. Just got to maybe stick a sentence on the website. Fantastic. Let's get right on it. And they've already said they're doing what you want them to do. I mean, what you want to do is you want to say to them, you're a big fat liar. You're not doing this at all. You are so wrong. But they have said that your thing is the right thing. Don't give that away. That's fantastic. Right? Oh, we just have a little bit of paperwork, a little bit of admin stuff to get it written up. Yeah, here we go. And maybe they're not really committed to it, but so what? The people who come after them will, because it's written down and it's on the website and it's in the policies and procedures. You made it real. And we don't need to do that, is completely outfoxed at this point. You can appeal to their legacy, right? Whoever comes after us will know that this is what we do. And everyone else can know that they can count on us for this. And this actually works. People end up, they were telling you they didn't need it, and then they end up agreeing to write it up because they accidentally said it was great. They thought that would make you go away. Everyone else is fine with it. Everyone who is here. Who is not here? Who has been excluded because they're not fine with it? And especially in a company that's like, I can't figure out why we can't attract applications from this segment of society. Well, that segment of society is not okay with this thing over here that I'm asking you to change. And this sometimes gets through the right head, and you do actually get a change. Again, their benefit. There's a superstar waiting out there, but they won't work here because of this policy, or they won't submit here, or they won't attend here, or whatever the issue is. If you've got a friend who quit over, bathroom policy or whatnot, this is the time to bring that story out. And again, you could be the one who changes things here. We can't control who applies. It's not our fault that no women submitted talks to the conference. Oh, isn't it? That's actually your job. Like if you're the program chair, your job is to get people to submit talks to your conference. If you're the HR person who advertises jobs, your job is to get people to apply to your job. If no one at all applied, we put a job up on the internet and got 0 job applications. Oh, well, what you gonna do? Guess we're not hiring. No, right? They would do something to get more applications. But when no women apply, when no people of color apply, they're like, oh, well, we tried. We tried doing nothing and it didn't work, so oh well. This is your job, to control who applies. And it's hard because it's not just about reaching, right? The reason that those people are not applying is because they don't think you're safe or they don't think you'll take them seriously. So you have to put in the work to show you're safe, to show their applications will get genuine consideration. But you can't just shrug and go, what you gonna do? You have to understand why they're not applying and then fix that. I don't want you to think that it's all going to be sunshine and roses. You will fail. And there are lots of ways to fail. You will come up to someone and give them all the fantastic reasons why there should be more tests in this project, and they will say, I think you're wrong. You will go up to people and tell them why there should be more tests in this project, and there'll be way more tests in the project, and the project will fail. Probably not for reasons related to the test, but the whole initiative will fall apart and no one will ever do it again. Or you'll get it all done completely, thoroughly, and it was not right. They were not invading armies at all, they were windmills. But at least you won't wonder, what if I had tried? And of course, you'll get better. You can get better by failing just as you can get better by succeeding. So putting the time in, even on something that doesn't work out, still has benefits to you. And of course, you don't always fail. You will fail, but not every time. You will also sometimes succeed. Sometimes when we're trying to change things, the pushback gets personal. And I don't want to skip over that. The bigger the stakes you're trying to change, the more unpleasant it can be for you personally. I know more people than I can count whose employers have told them, you need to stop. You can't be doing that on your blog, on your social media, on your podcast, whatever, anymore. It's making us look bad. There are brigades out there who will try and sometimes succeed in getting you fired, in spreading stories about how you can't be trusted because you were a dope dealer in university or whatever, and then can threaten physical harm to you and to your families. And again, I know people where the police have seen those threats and taken them very seriously and given people advice about how to cope with them. The bigger the stakes, the more likely this can happen. Nobody gave me death threats for saying stop teaching C, okay? There wasn't some printf brigade out there who was like, how dare you impugn? But with some changes, this is a real possibility. And the more you are moving things in this world, the more the mediocre people feel threatened and try to stop you from doing that. And you can't necessarily take that down to zero. So be smart, think about what you share, think about whether you're going to use your own name or not. There's tremendous power in doing things under your own name, but not everyone has to do that. Have a team around you, and people don't need to know where do you live, where do you work, those sorts of things. Where do your kids go to school? Think about what you can risk. And if it's feeling really dangerous, if you go back to some of the ideas and try something smaller, that can lower the stakes and lower the risk. Just, if it gets hard, and it gets hard because it's work, you tell yourself, if it was easy, anyone could do it. Sometimes all we can do is all we can do, but I've found that that often makes enough of a difference. Somebody should consider being somebody. And I used to tell my staff this all the time, it may not be your fault, but it is your problem, so what are you going to do about it? And these most famous questions, if not you, who? And if not now, when? I know this has been information dense, so I have a summary for you. You need to start by deciding to change something specifically and precise, not just not this, right? Precisely, what do I want to change? Who do I need to change? What motivates them? Do I have the ability to change those people or not? That's work. You got to know the audience, you got to figure out how to reach them, and you got to build up your own change power to be someone that people listen to, someone who can persuade and convince and nudge and influence. That's easier done in a team. You can make one or you can join one, but they are stronger, they are safer, you'll be happier. You do two things. Make the ask and you give the information in varying orders and quantities, but those are the two things you keep doing. And you have tools like analogies and questions, and if something goes through and doesn't work, you can learn from it and say, oh, I get it, that's because of this, here's what I'm going to do, and you can come back and iterate. Make your goals smaller if necessary. Things are too hard, that's how you make it easier. But don't forget to also make your goals larger. As you grow your change power, you can take on more. You don't just have to work on local small things. You can reach out for more. And celebrate your wins, especially with your team. We got someone off the horrible social media platform. Yay! They're not angels, but they got off the platform. We got this policy changed. We persuaded someone to apply for a job. We are fantastic. Sorry about that. That is, in a nutshell, how to change the world. Please do. Thank you. If my clock is correct, or my math about my bad clock is correct, I have 1 minute for questions. So maybe we should do them one-on-one, and I'll let you go to the next session. Thank you.